now. So as of now, we have discussed about some fundamental programming elements inside this Apex programming, like how can we write some small programs, how can we perform some operations, and where we can write the code, where we can execute, how to see the results, how to utilize the various fundamental building blocks to write some small programming logics, like by using the conditional statements, iterative statements, arrays, everything we have discussed. Now, in today's session, we are going to discuss about object-oriented programming. So what exactly the object-oriented programming? What is the use of this object-oriented programming? How can we implement the object-oriented features in our Salesforce? We'll see practically over here. Now, basically, whenever you are developing an application, we are having so many programming approaches are available. Like basically in the real world, in our application developments, we are following 4 programming approaches. One is procedural programming or structured oriented. Structured oriented programming approach. And the second one is object oriented programming approach. And the third one is component oriented programming approach. And the fourth one is service or message oriented programming. So these are the various programming approaches available in the IT industry as of now. We have procedural oriented, or this is also called as structured oriented programming. And the second one, object oriented programming. Third one, component oriented programming. And the fourth one is service oriented programming here. This is also called as message oriented programming to you. Now, whenever you are going to be implementing your application, it may be any application, it may be any technology, we have to use any one of this programming approach. Now, from those approaches, one of the approach called as object-oriented programming approach. Now, what exactly is object-oriented programming approach? What is the use of this object-oriented programming approach? Now we will see practically over here. Now, before understanding this object-oriented programming approach, first of all, we have to discuss about procedural oriented or the structured oriented. So now what do you mean by this procedure oriented programming or the structured oriented programming here? Now, for example, now first we'll take up that procedure oriented programming approach. So what exactly this procedure oriented programming approach? Now let's see practically over here. Now procedure oriented programming approach is going to be describing each and every business logic of the application has to be implemented in terms of either procedures or functions. Nothing but whatever the application that you are going to build, whatever the functionalities that you are going to implement, each and every application functionality or the business logic has to be get implemented in terms of procedures or functions. Then what do you mean by these procedures or functions? Basically, procedures or functions are nothing but the two categories which are comes under the subprograms. Okay, which are comes under this subprogram here. Now let's take some example here. Assume that I'm having a notepad application. Now this is the notepad application they have built. Now how they have implemented this application? By writing some code. How they have written this code? When coming to the code, they are not writing the code in a single view. They are going to be dividing that whole business logic into the various small parts. They're dividing into the various small parts. For example, I'm having a mobile device. In that mobile device, we are having some internal parts are available, small parts are available here. Like some keyboard is there in that mobile. You will be having some screen is available. You have some RAM is available. You have some internal storage is available. Some battery is available. Like that, multiple components are available. Whenever you are combining all these components together, it is called as a mobile. It may be any product. It may be anything in the real world. Like as even though we are also the human being. Now we are having some two eyes, 2 ears, two nose, two hands, two legs, like that. These are all combinedly called as a human being person. Now in this kind of scenario here, when coming to the Notepad application also, they have built that application by writing some small programming approaches here, small programs. That each and every small program is nothing but a procedure or a function. Now when coming to the procedure or a function, procedure is nothing but an individual unit which contains one or more statements to perform some certain operation, which are used to perform some certain operations inside your application here. Now, for example here, assume that when coming to the Notepad, when I click on new button, it is providing a new editor to you here, nothing but a new blank window. Now, in order to open that new blank window, they have written some code. Now that code will be getting executed when you click on new menu item here. When you click on open, what happen? It is opening a open file dialog here. From this one, you can select any of the file which you want to open inside this Notepad. So at that time, to open this open file dialog, they have written some code. Nothing but that business logic will be called, comes under this, will be executed when you click on open button. After typing some information inside this, when you click on save button, automatically it is opening a save file dialog here. In that one, whatever the name that you have given with that name, in that specified target location, your file will be getting saved. Nothing but what happened, each and every functionality they are going to be dividing into the small programs. Each and every small program they are going to be invoking based on the options provided by this application. When you click on new button, it is providing some business logic. It will be executing some business logic which will be attached to that new button here. When you click on open button, open menu item, it will be executing some part of the business logic here. When you click on save button, it is going to be invoking some small program. When you click on undo button, it is providing some more business logic. When you click on copy, cut, paste, each and everything is nothing but the various functionalities. When you click on those buttons, the associated business logic will be getting fired. So that what they have written, the whole entire application business logic, they're not executing at a time. Depends upon the option the user has selected, the associated business logic will be getting fired to you here. So further, what happened, the whole application functionality they have divided into the various small pieces. Those small pieces are called as procedures or functions. When coming to the procedures or function, these are comes under the subprogram. These are comes under the subprogram. Subprogram means it's a part of a program. It's a part of an application. The small parts combinedly called as a Notepad application to you here. So now for that here, whenever you are going to be developing an application as a software industry, now the whole application we cannot build at a time, so that we are going to be dividing the whole application to the various small modules. Now each and every module will be dividing into the sub modules here. Each and every sub module will be dividing into the various small programs. Then we are building all these small small programs. We are assembling all these programs like as integrating, and then we are going to preparing like as a module. If all the modules has been combined together, it will be called as a software product or an application here. Like the same way here also, whatever the business logic that you have implemented, the whole business logic we can able to divide into the various small programs. Those are called as procedures or functions. Now, so now in this kind of scenario here, what exactly the procedure-oriented programming here? When coming to the procedure-oriented programming, each and every functionality will be available in terms of the procedures or functions. In this one, each functionality of the application will be implemented or segregated into the small individual pieces are called as procedures or functions. Procedures or functions. Now, procedures or functions are comes under subprograms. Subprograms. Each procedure or function will have one or more statements to perform certain operation. Certain operation in the application. Each and every subprogram, nothing but the procedure or function is going to be contains one or more statements to perform some certain operations inside this application here. So now what are the various procedural oriented programming approaches are available here? What are the programming languages comes under this procedure oriented programming? Now we are having various programming languages like as the basic programming, Pascal, C, etc. These are the various programming languages which are following that procedure oriented approach here, where each and every functionality will be available in terms of the functions or procedures. So now what is the drawback of this procedure oriented programming and why the people are not preferring to go with this procedure oriented programming here? Now, suppose for example, let's take a scenario. Assume that I'm developing a banking application. I'm implementing a banking application. I'm developing a banking application. In this banking application, basically I want to provide the core banking facilities. So now as part of the core banking facilities, I would like to provide three kinds of facilities to my customer. One is deposit functionality. And the second one is the withdraw functionality. And the third one is account opening functionalities here. These are the three features I would like to provide to my customers as part of these core banking facilities. Core banking means the basic banking transaction which we are going to be offering to each and every customer of our bank. So now for that here, we are going to be offering all these three facilities over here. Now I'm providing these facilities to my customers, like as they can able to open an account here. Account opening, they can able to deposit the amount here. And then they can able to withdraw the amount. They can able to withdraw the amount also here. Now for that here, whatever the functionalities are required, each and every functionality I'm going to providing inside this application here. Now they can able to open a new account. They can able to deposit the amount inside this account. And they can able to withdraw the amount also here from that account. These are the three features I'm providing here. Whenever you are going to be opening an account, you will be having the multiple ways are available. Nothing but multiple types of accounts are available here. Now we are having so many types of accounts are available. We are offering to our customer. Like we are providing the different types of accounts to our customers. Like as the customer can able to open savings account. They can able to open a salary account. They can able to open a joint account. They can able to open a corporate account. they can able to open an NRI account, etc. Whatever the account types that you are offering, each and every account type the user can able to select here. Now, inside this account opening depends upon the need of the customer. We are going to be providing this option to these users here. Depends upon the need of the customer. We are going to be offering that associated type of account for my customer over here. Now, in this kind of scenario, what happened here? For each and every account type, we are having a different policies are available. If you want to open a savings account, then we have to pay some minimum amount of some 1,000 rupees or 10,000 rupees, whatever here. If you want to open now, if you want to open a savings account, then we have to pay some minimum amount as some 10,000 rupees, depends upon the bank. And then we have to provide one ID proof. We have to provide one address proof as well. And then if you want to open a salary account, then no need to pay any amount. This is a zero balance account. And just you have to provide one photograph, just you have to provide one PAN card. That's it. If you want to open a giant account, then we have to pay some 20,000 rupees as a minimum initial payment. And then we have to provide the documentations of both the people who are going to be operating that account. If it is a corporate account, then we have to provide the details of the organization, as well as we have to provide the details of the owner of that organization also, who is running that business. And we have to pay some 1 lakh rupees as the minimum balance. Like that depends upon each and every account type. We are having some certain business processes available here. So at that time, if any of the customer wants to open a savings account, then at that time, they are going to be having this graphical user interface. As soon as when they select this option as savings account, then in order to verify all these functionalities, in order to perform all these operations, we are going to be writing a separate business logic here. Now that business logic, we are going to be writing inside a separate function. Now for that here, we are going to be writing some different functions over here. Now we are writing a function like as some function 1, like as some function 1, which is used to verify or open a savings account. We are writing some business logic inside the function 2, which is used to verify the salary account functionality. Function 3 is used to open a giant account. And the function 4 to use it to open a corporate account. Function 5 to open a NRI account here. Nothing but each and every business logic we are going to be implementing in terms of the various functions to you. Now here every business logic we are going to be implementing in terms of the functions here. Nothing but whatever the business logic is required to open a savings account, that business logic we are going to be writing inside the function 1. To open that salary account, whatever the business logic is required, we are going to be writing that statement inside that function 2, and the remaining functionalities inside the function 3, function 4, and the function 5, like that. Now, as soon as when they click on that savings account to create a savings account, automatically this business logic will be getting executed here. When you click on salary account, it will be executing the function 2, which contains one or more statements to perform that operation to open a salary account for a customer. Like that, what happened when coming to my banking application, so many functionalities are available here. We are having so many functionalities are available inside my banking application because this is very complex application. So at that time, what happened, whatever the business logic is required, the whole business logic we have divided into the various small individual units over here. Now like as function 5, function 6, function 7, like that function 100. Assume that we have written 100 functions inside my application here. In order to implement that banking application, we have written some 100 functions over here. Now, as soon as when you click on savings account, it will be calling the function 1. When you click on NRI account, it is calling the function 5. When you click on some other deposit operations, it is executing some different functions over here. Now, in this kind of scenario here, whenever we are going to be using this procedure-oriented programming approach, there are some drawbacks are available here. There are some drawbacks are available over here. What are those drawbacks? Now we'll see practically here. When coming to the procedure-oriented programming approach, whatever the functions that you have implemented, like as function 1, function 2, function 3, like as all the functions 100 or function 1000, whatever, depends upon the application requirement, depends upon the number of modules, depends upon the number of features, depends upon the number of requirements expecting by the customer, depends upon the complexity of the requirement also. The number of functions are keep on increasing automatically here. Now, whatever the function that you have written to build this application, all these functions can be moving around the application here. Nothing but what will happen, moving around the application means one function can be able to call the other functions inside that application here. Okay, one function can able to call the other functions inside this application. Now, in this kind of scenario, what happened? There is no data security. Okay, there is no data security. Nothing but whatever the function that you have implemented inside that application, the whole functions will be moving around the application. Nothing but function 1 can invoke the function 2, function 3, function 4, function 5, up to function n. Nothing but the function 100. And the function 2 can be able to invoke all the other remaining 99 functions inside the application. Function 3 can able to call the remaining 99 function. Nothing but one function can able to call the other functions also over here. So at that time, there is no data security inside your procedure-oriented programming approach. This is the first fundamental drawback that we have. And the second one, okay, the second drawback is what are the functions that you have defined? Okay, what are the functions that you have defined? Assume that we have written some functions, some function 1 to function some 25, function 26 to some function 70, function 71 to some function 100. Assume that we have written so many functions over here, totally 100 functions. Now, when coming to the function 1 to function 25, nothing but the first 25 functions we have implemented in order to perform the account opening operations. Function 26 to function 27 we have implemented to perform deposit operations. Because deposit also we are having so many ways are available. In order to deposit the account, first of all, we have to cross check whether this account is in active status or not. For that, we have written some business logic. Once the account is in active status, then we have to fetch that account details. For that, we have written some more business logic, nothing but another function. Once the account details has been getting opened, then to deposit that amount, we are going to be verifying whether is there any limits are available to deposit that amount into that account or not. For that, we have to use that third up one more function. And upon depositing that amount, we are having so many ways are available. Like we can deposit the amount by transferring the amount through online, by using CDM machine, or by using check, by using demand draft, by the cash, whatever. Multiple options are available, so that we have written so many business logic with the help of functions, function 26 to function 70. And then for the withdraw also, so many business options are available. For that, we have implemented some function 71 to function 100. So at that time, what happened here? Function 1 to function 25 can be used to perform the account opening operations. Function 26 to function 70 is used to perform the deposit operations. Function 71 to function 100 we have implemented to perform the withdraw operations. Now at that time here, when coming to my banking organization, I'm having 3 employees are available here. Now the first employee is some Ramesh. Ramesh is going to be taking care of account openings. And the second person is some Kumar. Kumar is taking care of the deposits. And I'm having one more employee, some Prashant. Now this Prashant is taking care of withdraw operations. Nothing but what happened, 3 employees are available inside my bank. So now at that time, Ramesh is taking care of account opening. What are the functions are required to perform the account opening operation? This can be accessible by the Ramesh. Nothing but the function 1 to function 25 can be accessible by the Ramesh here. The remaining operation, nothing but the remaining functions cannot be accessible by the Ramesh here. Kumar can able to access the function 26 to 70. Prashant can able to access the function 71 to 100 here. Nothing but this is the restriction that I want to provide. Nothing but depends upon that user, depends upon the operations he is performing, based on that only that associated business logics to be get accessible here. Nothing but Ramesh can able to access only the functions function 1 to function 25. The remaining functions Ramesh cannot able to access. Kumar can able to access the function 26 to function 70. The remaining function he cannot able to access. And the withdraw, nothing but Prashant can able to access only the function 71 to function 100. Remaining function cannot be accessible by the Prashant. I want to provide this kind of restriction, but when coming to the procedure-oriented programming, we don't have that much of restrictions. Nothing but we cannot restrict the data that only these functions can be visible or accessible by this particular user. So now we don't have that kind of restriction. Data restriction is not available when coming to the procedure-oriented programming. The first drawback is in the procedure-oriented programming, the first drawback is there is no data security, because the whole functionalities, the whole functions will be moving around the application. For that here, each and every function can be able to invoke the other functions available inside the application. That is the first drawback. And the second drawback is, what are the functions that we have? Each and every function can be accessible by all the other users inside this application here. We cannot restrict only these functions can be accessible by the user 1, only these functions can be accessible by the user 2, only these functions can be accessible by the user 3. Like that, we cannot able to define, we cannot able to restrict that functionality here. That must have restrictions are not available when coming to the procedure-oriented programming. Now that's what here, when coming to the procedure-oriented programming, the people has identified these drawbacks. To avoid this drawback, they have divided the whole functionality into the various individual units here. Now, suppose for example here, come to a general scenario. Assume that I'm staying in my room along with my friends. I have some colleagues are there. They may be my childhood friends. They may be my colleagues in the office. They may be my friends also. Now we are staying in a room. We are having some 5 members are there. We all 5 members are staying in a room. Now in that room, if I'm placing any one item, then that item can be utilizing by all the people over here. Okay, there is no restriction. That item can be utilized by all the people over here. So now at that time, if you're placing like as a common item, then everybody in the room can able to access that. But sometime something is my personal, nothing but some personal things are also there with me, like as my passport, my educational documents, my bank account details, my bank passbook, my ATM cards and credit cards. Then at that time, what we can do, we have to make it as protected. We have to make it as secured. Then how? For that, we are placing these items into a cupboard and we are making a lock on that here. Now, in this kind of scenario, what happened? We are going to making a lock on that by placing our valuable items inside that cupboard here, so that only myself can able to unlock that. I can able to use it. The remaining members inside my room, they cannot able to access it. Like the same way here also, when coming to the procedure-oriented programming, it is making everything will be visible to all the people, so that I want to make it protected. I want to provide the data security. In order to make the data security, whatever the functionalities are available, these functionalities no need to make it as like as a single application. We can able to group all the related functions together like as a single entity and place it into a cupboard and make a lock on that here. So for that here, what we are going to do is, whatever the associated functions are available, whatever the functions are required to perform that account opening functionality, all these functions I would like to group together like as a single entity here. And then whatever the functions are required to perform the deposit operation, these functions I would like to make it as a separate entity here. Now like this is one entity here. For example, this is entity 1. And then this is entity 2. And then this is a separate entity over here. I'm creating like as a separate entity. Nothing but we are grouping together. Entity 3. Nothing but what happened, we are going to be grouping all these first 25 functions into a separate entity. Nothing but like as a group. The function 26 to function 70 we are making like as a separate group. Nothing but entity 2. And then we are going to be placing each and every function into the associated entities here. Now this each and every entity is called as a class. This each and every entity is called as a class. Nothing but when coming to a class, what it contains? Class contains a set of procedures or the functions inside it. Now, what do you mean by a class? Class is nothing but an entity. Okay, class is nothing but an entity which contains some set of procedures or the functions inside it. Why we are going to be placing these functions into a class? What is the need of defining the functions into the class? Because when coming to the procedure oriented programming, as of now everything we are going to be making is an individual, so that here everybody can able to access each and every function available inside my application. So for that, here what I want to do is I want to provide some restrictions. I want to provide some level of access. I want to restrict my data visibility also. For that, we are going to be grouping all these functions to the various small individual units. Those individual units are called as classes. So now for that, here they have introduced that programming approach called as object-oriented programming approach. So now what exactly the functionality of object-oriented programming approach? By using this object-oriented programming, we can able to divide the whole application functionality and the business logic into the small individual pieces, or the small individual units are called as classes here. Each and every functionality we can able to place inside that class. Each and every functionality we can able to place inside that class here. Nothing but class is like as what? A cupboard. Class is like as what? A cupboard. In that cupboard, what we are placing our valuable items. Now here, what is our valuable items? Our procedures, our functions, our variables. These are nothing but our valuable items. We are placing all these things into the class, and we are going to making a lock on that here. Then what is that key to open that lock? That is nothing but an object. That is nothing but an object. Now by using that lock only, by using that key only, we can able to unlock that. We can able to access each and every item which we have placed inside that cupboard. Like the same way here, they have introduced that concept called as object-oriented programming. Nothing but each and every functionality of the application can be dividing into the small individual pieces, that is called as a class. Now, when coming to the class, class contains a set of variables, or the functions, or the procedures, and so many things inside that, and it will be making a lock on that here. So at that time, if you want to access those items from the class, then we have to require a key. That key is nothing but an object. That key is nothing but an object here. By using that key only, we can able to unlock that class. We can able to access each and every member available inside that class. Whatever the procedures or the functions and the variables you have defined inside that class, those are called as the members of the class. Those are called as the members. If you want to access any of the class member, then we should have an object. So for that, they have introduced a feature called as object-oriented programming here. Now we are discussing about this object-oriented programming here. Now in the procedure-oriented programming, we have discussed about few drawbacks here. The first one is the data will be moving around the application so that there is no proper data security. And the second one, we can't restrict the members. We can't restrict the members inside the application. That is, one function can invoke the other functions inside the application. And then to avoid these drawbacks, they have introduced a feature called as object-oriented programming approach here. When coming to the object-oriented programming approach is going to be describing, instead of making each and every functionality like as a single individual entity, just we can able to club the related programming elements, and we can able to group together like as a single unit. That unit is called as a class. Now, it provides the flexibility It provides the flexibility to group a set of programming elements together into the various units. Various units called as classes. Now, when coming to the object-oriented programming here, so what exactly the class? What exactly the object over here? Now, let's see in general real world. So now, when coming to the class, class is nothing but a physical entity. Object is nothing but a logical entity. Now, for example, in the real world, what are the things that we have? These are nothing but the objects, like as a marker. Marker is nothing but an object. Then how many markers that we have? So many that may be manufactured by the different manufacturers. Reynolds people are manufacturing some marker, and then Rotamac people are manufacturing some markers. Some other people are also manufacturing the marker. Nothing but these are all are belongs to what? Marker. Nothing but we are having a class called as marker, and then the marker which you specifically looking at, that is called as that object. For example, assume that I'm a person, nothing but a human being. I'm an object here. Okay, I'm an object. Then what are the various properties that I have? I'm having the so many properties over here. Like as I'm having my name, my qualification, my date of birth, and my salary, my designation, my mobile number, my email ID, my height, my weight, everything. These are all are nothing but my properties here. Now, like the same way, we are having so many persons are available in the world. These are all are nothing but the objects here. Everybody will be having their own name, their own qualification, their own date of birth, their own age, their own the salary, designation, everything is available here. But all are nothing but the objects. All are belongs to what? Human being. Nothing but human being is nothing but what? A class. These all the objects are belongs to what? The human being class. Nothing but here, whenever the God has introducing that human being on the world, on the earth, he has defined some properties. Nothing but he is a human being. This human being should be having some properties. Okay, this human being is nothing but some properties here. Like for example, assume that. So now God has defined a person called as the human being in the world, on the earth. So now this is the human being over here. So now this is the human being. So now for this human being, the God has defined some few properties here. Like every human being should be having their name, their qualification, their date of birth, their age, their gender, their email ID, phone number, fax number, address, their salary, their designation, height, weight, the color. Like that, the God has defined so many properties here. Now, every human being will be having the value for these properties here. Every human being will be having some value for these properties. Assume that myself is nothing but some person here. Assume that we are having that a person. Like we are having a person, some Ramesh. We are having a person, some Ramesh here. Now Ramesh will be having some value for these properties here. Like Ramesh is having some value for these properties. These are the properties has been defined by this God. Now here Ramesh is having some value for these properties. Now he will be having some name over here. Now for the name, he is having some name, Ramesh. Qualification, some BTech. Date of birth, some value. Age, some 26. Gender, some male. Email ID, some Ramesh @ some gmail.com. Phone number, some value. Fax number, some value. Address, some Hyderabad. Salary, some 25,000. Designation, some software engineer. Height, some 5.7. Weight, some 67 kgs. Color, some white. Like that here. Nothing but this particular Ramesh is having his properties here. Like the same way, we are having one more person is also available, some Pawan. Now Pawan is also having some properties over here. Now Pawan is also having his own value for this particular properties. Pawan is having his own name, like as his name is some Pawan. Qualification, he did some MTech. Some different values are there. Date of birth, some different date of birth. Age is some that 45. Gender is some male. Email ID, some Pawan @ some gmail.com. Like that here, everybody will be having their own values here. Nothing but what we have observed. How many classes are there? How many objects are available? Only one class is available, nothing but the human being, and then these are all are derived from this class itself. Nothing but this is one object, human being. Ramesh is one object, Pawan is one object. Like that, multiple human beings are available, but these are all are belongs to a class called as human being class. Nothing but what happened when coming to the class contains a set of properties inside that. Nothing but these are all are nothing but the members. These members may be the variables, these members may be the procedures, these members may be the functions, these members may be the constructors. All these things we can able to place inside that. Now what happened here, when coming to a class, how many objects we have? Multiple objects are available. Nothing but one class can have n number of objects. Then what it contains, each and every object will be holding some value for this particular properties which we have defined inside the class. Nothing but in this particular class, have we assigned any value? No, we haven't assigned. So in this kind of scenario, do we need to allocate the memory for the class? No, nothing but for the class memory will not be get allocated when we are assigning the value by creating the object here. Now this is nothing but the object one. This is nothing but the object some Ramesh. Now this is one object here. This is the second object we have created, some object 2. This is nothing but some Pawan. Nothing but whenever we are creating the object, what happened? By creating the object, we can able to access each and every class properties, and we can assign some value for those properties also. So whenever you are assigning some value, then automatically memory should be required so that the memory will be allocating for the object, not for the classes. Now for one class, we are having multiple objects are available. Now for each and every object, separate set of memory will be getting allocated. Why? Because is here, each and every object will be holding some different values. Each and every object will be holding some different values over here. Even though these are referencing to the same class, but every object will be holding some different values, so that here, every object will be holding a separate set of memory to store the values inside that. So now here, in this kind of scenario, whenever if you want to access any class variable, if you want to access any class member, then first of all, we have to define that object here. Object is nothing but the key. Object is nothing but the key by which we can able to access each and every class member. When coming to the class, what it contains. When coming to the object, what it contains here. Now let's see. When coming to the class is nothing but a physical entity. Class is nothing but a physical entity. Why? Because class can be getting visible to you, but the object cannot be visible to you. Nothing but memory has been allocated. Then where it is available inside my hard disk. How the memory has been allocated, we don't know. We can't see that information here. Now for that here, when coming to the object is not a physical object, is a logical entity to you here. Whenever your application is running, it is going to be allocating the memory. That memory will be getting allocated to that object to you in order to hold some values inside that. But how the values has been stored, where exactly inside my hard disk it has stored, we can't see that information. Further, this is a logical entity. When coming to the class is a physical entity, object is a logical entity. For the class, Memory will not be getting allocated. For the object, the memory will be getting allocated. For a single class, we can able to have the multiple objects also here. The flexibility will be available to you. Now, in this kind of scenario here, whatever the things are available in the real world, each and everything is nothing but a object. It may be fan, it may be cooler, it may be computer, it may be mobile, it may be a marker, it may be any device whatever you are using. Okay, it may be any device whatever you are using, that is nothing but a object. Now these all the objects are belongs to a separate class here, the associated class. Now, so now this is the concept of object oriented programming to you here. Now, so for that here, when coming to the object oriented programming, it is providing that flexibility to group all the functionalities into the various smaller independent units here. Those are called as classes. Now, what exactly the class here? When coming to the class, a class is a blueprint or it is a physical entity. It is a physical entity. It is a physical entity which contains a collection of members inside it. Which contains a collection of members inside it. So now what are the various members we can able to place? We can group a collection of variables, functions, properties, procedures, constructors into a class. All the things we can able to place inside that here. You know what is a variable, you know how to define the variable. When moving forward, we are discussing about functions, properties, procedures, constructors, and everything. We are discussing everything inside this particular object-oriented programming over here. So now when coming to the class here, so for that your class will be having a set of members. So that simply we can say a class is nothing but a collection of data members. Class is also referred as a collection of data members and the member functions. Data members means what? Data members means variables. And the member functions mean the procedures or the functions or properties is are called as the member functions here. Nothing but we are going to be grouping all these things into the single independent entity that is called as a class. Like as we are grouping some variables, functions, properties, procedures into that associated class here. Now, when coming to a class here, in order to access the class members, we need an instance or a key called as an object. Then what do you mean by an object here? When coming to an object is a logical entity which holds the values for the class members. Which holds the values for the class members. For each and every class member, we can able to assign some value through this object only here. Now, by using the object only, we can access the class members. So, object is also called as an instance of a class. Object is also called as an instance of a class here. Now, when coming to a class here, a class can have one or more objects. A class can have one or more objects. And the next point, each object will occupy separate set of memory location. Each object occupies the separate set of memory location. For every object, it will allocate a different set of memory here. Even though the objects are maybe storing the same values also here, but the Salesforce is going to be allocating the different set of memory for every object here. Now, when coming to the object here, object will hold the values for each class member. For each and every class member, it will be holding the value inside that, so that the memory will be getting allocated for the object only here. Okay, the memory will be allocated object only here. The memory will not be allocating for the class. Now, memory will be allocated only for the object, not for the class. For the class, memory will not be get allocated. For the object only, the memory will be getting allocated to you here. This is the concept of classes and the object to you. So now we are having that class and we are having that object here. Now when coming to that object-oriented functionalities, object-oriented programming, each and every functionality we are going to be dividing into the individual smaller units are called as classes. When coming to a class simply we can say a class is nothing but a collection of variables and functions inside it. Or simply we can say a class is nothing but a blueprint or a physical entity which contains a collection of members. Those members may be the variables or the functions or the properties or the procedures or the constructors, everything we can able to place inside a class. Now, when coming to the class, it's like as a cupboard. Inside that class, whatever the members that you have placed, inside the class, if you want to access those members, then we have to define an instance. Nothing but we should have a key. That key is nothing but an instance, that is nothing but an object. By using that object only, we can able to unlock that key and we can able to access those class members, and we can assign some value, we can able to read the value from that variable also. So for that here, we are going to be defining that the object. When coming to an object is nothing but a logical entity which holds the value for that particular class members. Whatever the members are available inside that class, for every member we can able to assign some value. That value will be getting holding by the object to you. In order to hold that value, it needs some memory. That memory will be getting allocated for the object, not for the classes. So now already we have discussed about that. When coming to the object will be holding the separate set of memory. For every object, Salesforce will be allocating a separate set of memory over there. Even though the values you may be allocating same, every object will be holding some separate set of memory to you here. By using that object only, we can able to access the class members and we can able to assign the value for those class members as well here. Nothing but read and write operations, both we can perform with the help of this object only here. Okay. Now this is the concept of class and an object. Now, so now when coming to the object-oriented programming, Salesforce is providing the various fundamental features here. Okay, Salesforce is providing the various fundamental features by which we can able to implement that object-oriented programming here. Each and every object-oriented programming is going to be providing the 4 fundamental features to you here. Object-oriented programming provides the below fundamental features. The first one is encapsulation. Second one is abstraction. Third one is inheritance. Fourth one is polymorphism. These are the four fundamental features or the four fundamental pillars on top of which they have built this object-oriented programming principles. These are the principles over here. These are the pillars for the object-oriented programming to you. So now what are the various object-oriented programming that we have in our industry? For example, here we are having so many object-oriented programming features are available. Smalltalk. Smalltalk is the world's first object-oriented programming language that we have. After that, we are having C++. We are having VC++. We are having Java programming. We are having some C# .NET programming. We are having some VB.NET programming. Like there's so many programming languages are available along with our Apex programming language is also available to you here. Now Apex programming language is also comes under the object-oriented programming language to you. Apex is purely an object-oriented programming language that already we have discussed over there in our initial concept of Apex programming to you. So now where each and every fundamentals has been built upon the classes as well as the objects to you. Now these are the various object-oriented programming languages that we have in the industry. Now depends upon the requirement, depends upon the programming languages the people prefers to use to develop their application. They are going to be using that associated programming languages to you over here. Now, whatever the object-oriented programming languages that we have, each and every object-oriented programming language has to support these four fundamental features here. The first one is encapsulation. What do you mean by encapsulation? What is the use of this encapsulation? Now we'll see practically here. Encapsulating means what? Grouping, collecting, making together. So now at that time, when coming to the encapsulation feature is going to be describing to you, we can able to group a collection of members together, like as an independent unit. Now, by using this encapsulation, we can able to group a collection of variables and the functions or the business logic together, like as a single entity. Now then how can we achieve this encapsulation? Encapsulation can be achieved by using two components here. As of now, we have discussed just now with an example that whenever you are going to be grouping all these members, what we are using? We are using a class. So now encapsulation can be achieved with the help of a class over here. Okay. Now along with that, we can able to use one more functionality that is called as interface. When moving forward, we will see what exactly the interface over here. Now encapsulation. Now encapsulation allows us to group a set of business logics, comma variables and functions together into a single entity. Now here, how can we achieve this encapsulation here? Now simply we can say encapsulation. Encapsulation is nothing but wrapping up of data, variables and the member functions into a single unit. Now we can able to define like this also here. It is nothing but wrapping up of variables and functions together into a single entity, single unit. Now then how can we group this one here? How can we achieve this encapsulation here? Now encapsulation can be achieved by using classes and interfaces. These are the two components are available which we are going to be discussing during that object-oriented programming, by which we can able to group a collection of variables and the functions together here. Now for that, to group those things, we are using a unit called as the class or an interface. Now by using these classes or by using these interfaces, we can able to achieve the encapsulation feature. Now the second one, abstraction. Whenever you are going to be building a collection of functionalities to be used inside your application, from those functionalities, some functionalities needs to be get exposed to the user. Some functionalities we need to hide from the user as well. Suppose, for example, assume that I would like to have a chatting with my friend. I would like to have some chatting with my friend, nothing but some text conversation. I would like to have some text conversation with my friend. Now, what are the various tools that we have? We are having so many tools out there, like as Yahoo Messenger. We are having some Skype. We are having some Google Talk. If it is a mobile, we are having the WhatsApp. Like that, so many tools are available here. Let's assume that I'm using some Yahoo Messenger. I'm using some Yahoo Messenger to have the conversation with my friends. Assume that by using this Yahoo Messenger, we can able to have the text conversation. We can able to have the audio conversation. We can have the video conversation also here. So now in this kind of scenario here, if you want to send some message to your friend by using Yahoo Messenger, first of all, you have to log in into the Yahoo Messenger application. And then inside the Yahoo Messenger application, once you're logged in, it is providing some graphical user interfaces to you by which we can able to add some contacts. We can modify some contacts. We can remove some contacts. And we can able to have some alerts. And we can send some notifications. We can make an audio call. We can make a video call, everything. So everything we can able to perform by using some graphical user interfaces given by the Yahoo Messenger application. Now in this kind of scenario, now let me know, do you know how this application has been implemented? What programming language they have used? What technologies they have used to build this application? What databases they are using to store our conversations information? What architecture they have followed to develop this application? What classes they have implemented? What methods they have implemented? What business logic they have provided inside that methods? We don't know all these things. Nothing but what happened as a user, we don't need all these things to be get aware of that. Just we need that functionality, we are utilizing that. What are the features that we are expecting, those are available or not, that's it. So now we don't need to bother about that, how they have implemented, what problems they have faced while implementing that, how complex it is to develop, that we no need to aware of all these things. We no need to bother about all these things here. So now for that, here in this kind of scenario here, when coming to the abstraction is going to be providing the flexibility that we can able to provide the graphical user interface to the user, and then we can able to hide the backend implementation here. How we have implemented that, what classes we have implemented, what methods we have implemented, what business logic we have written, what databases we are using, what architecture we have followed, everything we are not going to be disclosing to the user here. If I'm disclosing all this information to the user, if the user is a developer, he know all these things, then he can able to modify my code. He can able to change his name as from Yahoo Messenger to My Messenger, so that he will be releasing a new tool into the market that with My Messenger name here. So for that here, I would like to hide something here. At that time, whenever the developer is going to be writing some code, whenever the developer is going to be customizing my business logic, at that time, they can able to do some malfunctioning also inside that. So because of that, we are losing our brand name. Because of that, we are losing our credibility from the customers here. So for that here, what are the things are required? Only those things we are providing to the user. What are the things are not required for the user? Those we are not providing, we are hiding from the user here. So for that here, something is visible to the user, something is hidden from the user over here. So now for that here, we are going to be using abstract. That's what here also, whenever you are doing your education, nothing but your graduation at that time, at the last semester, we are going to be doing one project here. For that project, first of all, you are giving the abstract. In that abstract, what we are providing the high level information of the project, which we are going to do for the next 2 to 3 months over here. In the next 2 to 3 months, what project on which we are going to working on, just we are going to be giving some highlights over here. Now some outline we are giving that, nothing but in the next 2 to 3 months, because of this next semester, the whole project semester, during this time, I am going to working on this project. My project title is so and so library management system. In that library management system, we are going to providing these modules here. How you are developing these modules, what screens you are providing, what business logic you are writing, what database you are using, what tables you are designing, what business logic you are writing. We're not discussing everything here. Just we are giving the 2-page papers of abstract here. Nothing but this is the high level information which I'm going to be working from the now onwards for the next 2 to 3 months. Once you are done, then we can able to explain that project here. This is the project I did. This is the screen. These are the modules. These are the functionalities here. Like that, we can able to explain to the user. So now for that here, when coming to the abstraction, abstraction is going to be giving the flexibility to you that not only dividing the whole application functionality into the various smaller pieces, we can able to make it visible to the users, which is required. We can able to hide something which are not required for the user. So now for why we are hiding? For the data security. What are the code that we are written, that code I would like to hide. I would like to make it confidential. I would like to make it secured. So for that here, we are going to be making that secured with the help of this abstraction. The main advantage of the abstraction is security. Nothing but the data hiding. By hiding the data, we can able to make it secured. That's what here, whenever you are developing your application, just we are going to be giving the application functionality to the customer here. You are not providing that entire code, how you are develop this application over here. For that here, we're preparing a setup file. That setup file is containing what? Some executable components are available, but it will not visible any code to you. What are the backend code you have implemented, that code will not be visible to the end users here. Just they can able double click on the setup file. It is opening the graphical user interface. We can enter the credentials. You can log in. You can operate everything, whatever you want. But you can't see whatever the code has been written by the developer upon developing that application. Now let's see this abstraction here. When coming to the abstraction, now abstraction, it provides the graphical user interfaces to the user. It is providing the graphical user interface to the user, but without providing the complexity of the implementation. Complexity of the implementation. How we have implemented, what problems we have faced while implementing that, how complex it is to develop this application. We no need to, the client no need to bother about that. The end user no need to bother about that. What are the features that we are expecting, those are available or not. That's it. That's it what we are expecting as a customer. Now for that here, we are going to be not exposing our backend implementation to the end user, because end user is not a technical guy. He's not a developer, so that he cannot able to understand anything over here. That's why we are not providing those information to that user. Now what is the advantage over here? By using abstraction, used to achieve the data hiding or security. Now, the third feature is inheritance. What exactly the inheritance here? Inheriting means what? Accessing, acquiring, extending the functionality here, leveraging the features. So now at that time, what we are going to be inheriting here? What we are going to be exposing over here? Now let's see. For example, assume that some time back we got a requirement from our customer. My customer has given some requirements to us. He wants us to build a small calculator application. So now assume that this is the calculator application we have built based on the customer's requirement. Now in this calculator application, he asks us to provide some certain basic mathematical calculations. This is the calculator application the customer is expecting here. Based on the requirement, we have implemented some certain features. Addition, subtraction, multiplication. These are the three functions they're expecting during the time. Based on the requirement, we have implemented that functionalities and we have deployed the code. The client end users are accessing that application. Everything is fine. There is no issues. Now the project is going on in healthy manner. There is no issues inside that. So now the client expecting some more new functionalities as part of these enhancements, as part of the latest release, or as part of the latest new enhancements. The customer wants us to provide some more additional functionalities over here. Now assume that this calculator we have provided in the version 1.0. Now the client is going to planning to release the version 2.0 here. The client is planning to release the version 2.0. In this 2.0 also they are going to be expecting the similar kind of functionalities over here. They're also nothing but in this 2.0 version also nothing but 2.0 version also they're expecting the similar kind of functionalities we want to provide. But along with this addition, subtraction and the multiplication, the client is expecting some more features also here. Like they want division of function, they want that modulus. Now these functions also they're expecting now in this case. Now what we can do? Do we need to write a separate class with all these methods in the version 2.0? If I'm writing, then what will happen? There is a duplicate code. Redundant code will be available inside my application here. Now, then what we can do? Do we need to modify the class of version 1.0? If I'm providing this latest feature inside the version 1.0, the older people, nothing but the old users also, old customers also can get the latest features. But I want to generate the different revenue over here by selling out the version 2.0 with the latest features. These latest features to be get accessible to only the latest customers who has purchased my latest release of my software or the application. So now in this kind of scenario, what happened here? Instead of say writing the same code again and again and again, instead of writing the redundant code inside your application, which will be causing some ambiguity, which will be taking more lines of code, which will be taking more time to compile, which will be taking the more time to execute, which will be causing some performance issues inside my application. To avoid that problem here, instead of writing the same code again and again and again, just I would like to reuse that version 1.0 code inside this version 2.0. So now for that here, whatever the three functionalities are available inside that version 1.0, I don't want to write this code again. Nothing but I'm making my code as generic over here. I'm making my code as generic, and whatever the functionalities are required, only those additional functionalities I'm writing together here, and then the remaining functionalities I'm going to be accessing from the version 1.0. In order to get this remaining functionalities, we are going to be referencing that version 1.0 here. Nothing but we are going to be accessing that version 1.0 functionalities into the version 2.0 over here. So now for that here, in this kind of scenario, assume that this is one class A, this is some class B. Nothing but class A functionalities we are accessing into that class B here. Now at that time here, for example, this is some class A. This is some class B. Now in this case, whenever you are going to be acquiring the functionalities here, whenever you are going to be acquiring the functionalities of the class A into that class B, class A into that class B, at that time, whatever the functionalities are available in the class A, the whole functionalities will be accessible from the class B itself. Nothing but class B will be extension. Class B is nothing but the extension class here. Nothing but whatever the ready-made, whatever the three functions available, these are not sufficient. We are going to be adding some extension. Okay, we are adding some extension over here. Now, suppose for example here, assume that we are having a shop. Okay, we are having a shopping mall. Now, the shopping mall, they have started in a small building. Okay, assume that this is some RS Brothers or Charmas or whatever. They have started in a small building. Now, initially they're having very few customers, and then they're providing few items. Only the wardrobes are providing, like some ladies and gents t-shirts and the saris and everything, so that they have started that business with a small building. Now, initially the building is sufficient for these people because they're having very less number of customers. They're providing very few items over here. Every day they're getting some more and more customers. Why? Because is whatever the wardrobes they're offering, these are very, very quality wardrobes. And that too, they're offering some discounts also. Because of this discount, the people are showing interest more to buy the products, to buy the wardrobes from the RS Brothers. So at that time, their businesses keep on growing. Number of customers are keep on adding. So now whatever the small building they are using right now, in that small building, they cannot able to accommodate more number of customers in the festival season. During the festival season, so many people are showing interest to buy the wardrobes from this showroom here. So that whatever the space they have inside the building, that is not sufficient. They're not able to accommodate more number of customers inside that. Because of that, the customers are going to some other shopping mall, so that they will be losing some customers here. So for that, what they will do, they are going to be adding some more, nothing but one more showroom beside that place. Beside the building, nothing but in the next building, they're having some huge spaces available. In that huge space, they are going to be adding one more. They're going to establishing one more showroom here. Nothing but that is nothing but the extension. Like this is RS Brothers extension. Nothing but this is a new one, where along with these items, we have provided some more items also here. Now in this particular first building, we have provided only the ladies and gents. Now in the second, nothing but in the next building, which is having the huge spaces there. In that huge space, not only the wardrobes, we have offered that jewelry showroom also inside that. From the RS Brothers, we are offering some jewelries also here. And we are offering some electronical items also here. Nothing but what I mean, this is an extension. Nothing but here, if this particular building is full, the same thing, nothing but the same items are available in the second extension showroom also here, so that we can go to there and you will be having some more additional functionalities available over there. Some more additional items are available over there. Like the same way here also, in this kind of scenario, no need to write that same code again and again and again. No need to modify the existing code. Just we can able to reuse the code whenever you want, wherever you want. So for that, here we are going to be using inheritance. Nothing but we are inheriting the features of one class. Nothing but class A functionality is we are inheriting into the class B, so that class B will be having the functionalities of class A as well as its own additional features which are implemented inside this. Both will be available to you. That's what here we are going to be using these classes here. Now in this class, in this particular functionalities, whatever the class which we are going to be accessing, nothing but class A we are going to be accessing right now here. Now this class A is nothing but a parent class. This class B is called as a child class. Child class is referencing the parent. Child class is referencing the parent over here. Now at that time, the class B is called as a child class. This is also called as a subclass. This is also called as a derived class. Okay, derived class, which has been derived based on the functionalities of class A. Now this class A is called as a parent class or a super class or a base class. Okay. Now these are the functionalities are available inside your inheritance over here. Now let's make a note of it here. Inheritance. It is the feature of acquiring or accessing one class functionalities, one class feature, simply one class features into another class, without having the redundant code inside the application. Without having that redundant code inside that application. Nothing but redundant means duplicate code we cannot have. The same copy of the code we cannot able to place multiple places. Here we have to make our code generic. Only one copy of the code should be there here. Now what is the advantage of this inheritance here? So by using this inheritance, what we are doing, instead of writing that same code again and again and again, just we are going to reusing that existing code here. Nothing but reusability. The main advantage of inheritance is reusability. By using inheritance, we can achieve the reusability. We can achieve that reusability. And the next one, the polymorphism. So what exactly the polymorphism over here? Now basically, polymorphism is not an English word. Polymorphism is a Greek word. It is a Greek word. Now inside that, poly means many, and the morphism means forms. Like you may be observing so many morphic photos in the internet. Nothing but the face will be belongs to one person, the whole body will be belongs to some other persons. These are nothing but the morphisms. Okay, these are called as a morphic photos. So now when coming to the polymorphism, it is giving the functionality here. It is giving some advantages to you that we can able to define the multiple functions with the same name. Generally, when you go to that procedure-oriented programming, each and every function should be having a unique name. We cannot define two functions with the same name here. Now, there might be some cases in the industry, right now. For example, my client asks us to provide a calculator where to perform some addition operation here. Now, the user wants to perform, some user wants to perform the addition on two values. For that, I have provided one function here. Some user wants to perform the addition on three values. Some user wants to perform the addition on 4 values, 5 values, 10 values, 20 values, 100 values also here. So now at that time, what needs to be done? If it is a C programming language, now for each and every function, we have to give a different name. The addition function to perform the operations on two integer values, we have to give the function name as different. For the three numbers in addition, we have to give a different name here. Nothing but what happened for every function, we have to give a different name. But all are belongs to what? Addition only here. All are belongs to what? Addition. But depends upon their need, they are going to be accessing that function. Somebody wants to do addition on two values. Somebody wants to do the addition on three values, 4 values, 20 values, 100 values also here. But all are belongs to the addition operation only. So in this kind of scenario, instead of having the different functions with this different name, we can able to create the multiple functions with the same name itself. So now for that here, when coming to the polymorphism is going to be providing the flexibility that we can able to define the multiple functions with the same name. Then how can we differentiate that? In order to differentiate that, we have to use a signature of the function here. Signature means what? The parameters. Nothing but input values. Now on how many values you would like to perform the addition? It may be 2 values, it may be 3 values, it may be 4 values, it may be 10 values or 100 values, whatever. So for that here, the functions can be get differentiated in terms of the number of parameters, the type of the parameters, and the order of the parameters also here. So now for that here, we are going to be using the polymorphism feature. When coming to the polymorphism feature, by using polymorphism, we can define multiple functions with the same name. With the same name. And each function can be differentiated in terms of the signature. Signature means what? The number of parameters. Parameter means input values. And the order of the parameters. And type of the parameters. Type of the parameters. So this is how we can able to differentiate that here. When coming to the polymorphism can be achieved by using two concepts over here. Basically, in our Apex programming, we are having two types of polymorphism. Apex provides two types of polymorphism. First one is compile time polymorphism. This is also called as LE binding, or it is also called as static binding. Now this compile time polymorphism can be achieved by using the two concepts called as overloading here. This feature can be achieved by using overloading. We can achieve the overloading with the below features. First one is function overloading. Second one is constructor overloading. And the second one is runtime polymorphism. This is also called as the late binding. It is also called as dynamic binding. So now this feature can be achieved by using overriding. We can implement overriding by using function overriding feature. These are the four fundamental features and the pillars available when coming to the object-oriented programming language to you. This is the high-level information about that, the object-oriented programming language. And next one, we are going to discuss about that classes. In the tomorrow morning session, we are going to be discussing about these classes. What exactly a class?